shaping policy, advancing development.
I have a twin, and his name is Femi Ayodele. I need to ask you, have you seen the updated, improved version of Femi Ayodele? Well, let me unveil that to you, but I will do that after telling you what we'll be looking at right now. You remember again that today is May 27th. Just in case you left your house without having the chance to check your calendar, or you didn't even check your phone to know what day of the month it is. It is May 27th, and it happens to be International Children's Day, especially for countries like Nigeria that are very passionate about the day. So in days like this, what you would find if you go around, you find that there are ceremonies organized by government at every level to celebrate the Nigerian child. So the theme this year is for every child, every right. Now, there are rights that a child should enjoy. It doesn't matter the location of the child. It doesn't matter the race of the child, because there is a convention on the rights of child, and many countries are signatory to this convention. By that, they are meant to ensure that the rights of children are protected. Now, children should not be exposed to harm in any way and in any form. So we'll be looking at some of the rights of the children and how far Nigeria and the rest part of the world has come in ensuring that these rights are protected. But like I said, I need to show to you the latest improved version of Femi Ayodele. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great.
You make me sound as if I'm a Santa Claus coming.
No, I said a new improved version of you. You know, every day gives one the opportunity to improve on what they've been. So I hope that today there's been, so I can see some improvement already. Your face is glowing. It seems like the weekend did lots of good.
You know, it's part of what we'll do to see that we get better, so that at what you do, you also get better.
All right.
So that at least you can serve the interests of the people and do what is expected of you. All right, glad to know you're there with us. Today is Children's Day, the World Children's Day, where we celebrate every child, you know, and the theme for this year is for every child, every right, which is drawing the attention to need for us to support the right of every child. Now, this is what we're going to talk about. What are these rights? What are the, expectations from parents, from school owners, from government, as regards respecting the rights of every child? And to shed more light on this, we're being joined by a special guest who is a child rights activist. We're being joined by Taiwo Akinlami, who joins us virtually. Taiwo, glad to have you join us this morning. Taiwo, I hope you can hear me.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now. Good to see you again, Taiwo. It's been a while.
Thank you very much. It's been a while, yes.
All right. I know you're so passionate about this subject as a child rights activist. You've been having campaigns in this regard. Now, let's start by looking at the theme for this year. For every child, there's a right. Talk to us about this right and the need to respect them.
Well, it is. I talk to you with mixed feelings, because when you talk about the rights of children, particularly in Nigeria, you'll find out there's a whole lot of room for improvement. And when I say that there's a lot of room for improvement, I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm not trying to come from the, pessimistic side, because when you look at it critically, what is there, for the Nigerian child, So these rights, there's something we call 4 baskets of rights. There are 4 baskets of rights that children are supposed to have. The first one is what we call the survival rights, the rights of children to survival. That begins with when the child is in the womb, when the child is born, the father, the child have the right to immunization. The father, the child should have the right to grow. There's what we call key household practices. The father, the growth of the child should be monitored. The father, the child should not suffer stunted growth, and a whole lot of that. That's what we call survival rights. From survival right, we move to developmental rights. After a child has survived, the child must be able to develop. That is where we have education. The right of the child under the UBE to have access to education from cradle to at least the first 9 years. The right of the child to have education, the right of the mind of the child to develop, the right to help the child to form opinion, the right to religion. All of these are under what we call developmental right. Then from developmental right, we move to protection right. Children need to be protected from physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, all forms of abuse. Children must be protected from all of those abuse. Then from when the child is now protected, from there you move to what we call participation rights. That is, children have the right to participate in matters that concerns them. They have to have their voice. They have to be trained to be able to speak up. They have to be trained to be able to participate in matters that concerns them. So these are 4 baskets of rights that children have. Now, the question therefore is, if we say children have rights, where do they get these rights from? As far as I'm concerned, rights are basically divine endowment. No human being conferred rights on another. God, in his awesomeness, conferred rights on human beings. Those rights are inalienable. We are born with those rights. When we are denied of those rights, we cease to be lesser than human. And that's why the real meaning of abuse is dehumanization. That is making somebody less human than God has created the person to be. And so what do laws do? Laws only validate a divine endowment. That's what laws do. Laws, the source of human rights is not the law. The source of human rights is the law of God. Is the fact that humans are made in the image and the likeness of God. And the responsibility, therefore, of laws and the makers of law is to acknowledge those rights. And the laws cannot go against those rights. If they go against those rights that have been endowed by God, they will be going against the forces of nature. Then what is the role of people who are supposed to implement the law, enforce the law? You have the primary parents, you have the secondary parents. Their role is to respect those rights. Please note, we don't give children their rights. We respect the right that have been given to them, endowed by God, validated by law. That is the meaning of, that is what people who are supposed to respect the rights of children are supposed to do. I hear people say, let's give children their rights. You don't give children their rights. You don't give me my property. My right belongs to me. You don't give me my right. You give me my property. And when you give me you can't give me my property and I'll be grateful to you. You invite me to come speak somewhere. You see me off to my car. And I try to get you to my car. And you now say that I should say thank you to you for, ushering me to my car. That is my car. It is not yours. So when we relate with children, with this sense of children should be grateful because you give them education. Children should be grateful because you give them health. Children health care. Children should be grateful because you send them to school. When children say thank you, our response as duty bearers is a duty, because these children are right holders. We are duty bearers. So we fail in our responsibilities when one child does not go to school. We fail in our responsibility when one child does not have health care. We fail in our responsibility when one child does not have access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. We fail in our responsibility when one child does not have clothes to wear. We fail in our responsibility when one child does not have shelter over his head. We fail in our responsibility when one child is subjected to child labor. We fail in our responsibility when one child is subjected to child sexual abuse. So the foundational truth, therefore, is that children are here as our guests. And as our guests, the way we treat them will determine whether we are good hosts or bad hosts. Thank you.
All right, let's look at survivor rights, which includes rights to basic necessities such as food, shelter, and even healthcare. Now, you are the CEO of the Power Parent, and I know that in the course of your work, you've interacted a lot with parents. Does it come across like some parents would willingly not want to provide these rights for their children? What are some of the challenges that parents are faced with that inhibits their ability to provide these rights for children?
Well, I think that when you speak to Africa, you know, parents are going through a lot because there's no nation on earth where the responsibility of raising children is only on the shoulder of parents. That's what we call right. That's what we talk about right-based approach parenting. That is, there's something we call social protection. Parents are supposed to, so there are 4 rings of protection. 4. The first one is the family. The second one is the community. The third one is the international, is the state, that is the country. The fourth one is the international community. The role of the family is to inculcate positive value system in their children. They are the number one. They are the number one culture shapers. They are the number one. They are the primary. They are the primary body or the primary private institution that is responsible for socializing children. That is the family. Then what is the responsibility of the community? In the community, you have the media. In the community, you have the schools. In the community, you have the religious organization. In the community, you have neighbors. What is the responsibility of the community? The responsibility of the community is to support the family to do these things that the family is supposed to do, which is the primary responsibility of the family. Then you have the state. What is the responsibility of the state? The responsibility of the state is to support the family in regards to social protection, provision of social amenities, making sure that the economy is working so that parents can have good job, they can live above poverty line, they can be in a good place to take care of their children. That is the role of the state. The state is to put in place policies, to put in place to see to the economic well-being of the people as enunciated in Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, that the welfare and the responsibility of the people shall be the welfare of government. That is the responsibility of government right there. Then what is the responsibility of the international community? The international community is to galvanize international effort to ensure they hold states responsible. That is why at the international level, you have the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is the most ratified convention in the world today. The most ratified human rights convention in the world today is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Then when you move to Nigeria, you have the Child Rights Act 2003, which was promulgated in pursuant to the provisions of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Then when you move to the state levels, you have what we call the Child Rights Law of each state. All of these laws are clear as to responsibility, as to these 4 institutions, the role of the family, the role of the community, the role of the state, and the role of the international community. But as you find it today, if you look at the indices, and you look at the indices of judging the responsibility of family, the responsibility of state, the responsibility of the international community, the responsibility of the community, you find that to a very large extent, the Nigerian families are going through a lot. We cannot overemphasize that because let me ask you a question now. What today accrues to the Nigerian child by virtue of the fact that it's a Nigerian child? What is it? Is it education? Is it health? And I'll give you statistics as time goes on. What is it exactly that the Nigerian child can say, because I'm a Nigerian child, this is what I enjoy? What is it exactly in terms of the nitty-gritty of it? So what you find today is that children are citizens of their families because their families are the one providing education. They are the one providing shelter. They are the one providing security. They are the one providing everything for the child, right? Now, the children are the citizens of their family and the children whose families don't have the resources to provide education, to provide shelter, they are on the street. The ones whose families don't have the resources to provide education are out of school, over 20 million of them, according to UNESCO. The ones whose parents don't have the resources to provide shelter, they are on the street. The ones whose parents don't have the capacity to send to school, they are involved in child labor. So what we find is that Mandela said there is no keener revelation of the soul of a child than how we treat our children. The way we treat our children in Africa is either there's no argument about the fact that our souls are dead. Now, what we need to now find out is whether we are preparing for a resurrection or we are preparing for a burial. And it is my hope that in days like this, we'll call attention to this, to the reality of the state of our children, and we are able to move from the place of inertia, the place of neglect, the place of abandonment, the place of dehumanization, the place of neglect, and we're able to move to a place of action, where we begin to see that we don't have a future except we pay attention to our children. When we begin to see that, according to Indian American proverb, we do not inherit the word from our forefathers, we borrow it from our children. The question, therefore, is that if we borrow the word from our children, in what state are we supposed to return it to them when we are gone? That is the reality on ground. And when you look around you critically, there's nobody that I know, closely, who are sending their children to a public school. Most people send their children to private school. Even people in the people in the middle class are in private school, but even people that are living on less than $1 per day, they'll find a 20 naira per day school that they can send their child to. So parents are going through a lot, and in days like this, we must call attention to the issues that parents are going through, and we must be committed to finding lasting solution to all of those things. Thank you.
All right, interesting. I like the fact that earlier you were able to summarize these rights. But the question is, how will you assess the level of general awareness when it comes to these rights? The question is, you talked about earlier the Child's Right Act of 2003. The question is, how many parents are familiar with these rights? And then how can they take advantage of a day like this to improve the level of general awareness when it comes to respecting the rights of children?
Well, when we talk about how our rights, how the rights of children are being met, for me, it's a whole lot of concern, because you cannot. Okay, so if we go to how we came about the Child's Right Act in itself, the Child's Right Act in itself was not a product of political will of Nigerian leaders. The Child Rights Act came into existence under the former president, Obasanjo. It is important to note that when that Child's Rights Law, when that bill was presented before the National Assembly, it was thrown out. It took organizations like UNICEF, other international organizations. They were the one. It is interesting to note that Child's Right Law was sponsored by UNICEF. UNICEF paid the professionals who prepared that Child's Right Law. Note, UNICEF is not an appendage of the Nigerian government. UNICEF is an international organization that has relationship with the Nigerian government on matters that has to do with children. Some nations don't collect money from UNICEF. They give to UNICEF. Now, we collect from UNICEF, as Africans, but some nations give to UNICEF, right? And so Nigeria is a country where we submit the rights of our children. We submit it to international organizations. So Child's Right Act came into existence by the effort of UNICEF and other organizations, international organizations, working with local organizations. Then from there, you move to the Child's Right Law of different states. The Child's Right Law of different states, I was privileged to work with UNICEF to go from state to state to convince states to pass the Child's Right Law into law, right? That also was spearheaded by UNICEF. We find a situation where the laws that are supposed to govern the lives of our children are being foisted on us by international bodies. We lobbied lawmakers, we spoke to lawmakers, we had community dialogues, we had different interventions to convince leaders of different states to pass this law, right? That in itself is a conversation I should not go into in public. What transpired at that level of convincing our own leader to pass a law that will benefit our children? So when you see the background that led to the promulgation of the Child's Right Act itself, that led to the promulgation of the Child's Right laws in different states itself, you will find that you cannot give what you do not have. You cannot finance what you do not initiate. Most of these laws that we're talking about were not initiated by the Nigerian government. They were foisted on us. Now, look, At the national level, the Child Rights Act has been passed in 2003. How many years ago? How many years ago now? Is that law not due to review? Because under that law, international adoption is not recognized. To do international adoption in Nigeria is a major issue because out of the fear of the lawmakers, they did not address such issues. There are many diverse issues that were not addressed under the Child Rights Act. Cyberbullying, issues like cyberbullying, all of these things are not addressed under the Child Rights Act because at the time the Child Rights Act was being promulgated, all of these issues have not crystallized. Now, so for how many years now, since 2003, that Child Rights Act has been enforced? How come we have not reviewed it? How come we have not amended it? Because UNICEF has soft-pedaled on its activities in those areas. UNICEF now focus on things like birth registration. They focus on troubled area in the north. They have reduced their expenditure and expenses on issues that has to do with promulgation of law. I think they've thought to themselves to say, you know what? You guys is your country, is your nation. We will do the much we can do. You focus on what you can do. And that is not clearly declared anywhere or defined. But the truth of the matter is that that is reality. That's why those laws have not been amended. And the ones that are in existence, that's why they are not being followed. So for me, we have a whole lot of work to do. And for me, days like this should not be about just talking about the issues. Days like this should present us with calling out the institutions that are responsible for the security and the welfare of our children. And that's why I do all the year round. That's why I do all the year round. My advocacy is not on Children's Day. My advocacy is every blessed day. Whether I'm working in the private sector, I'm working in the public sector, this is what I do 24/7, working for the best interest of the Nigerian child, both at the local level and at the international level. For me, we can't even do enough. When we look at the level of the rot, now maybe I need to show you, maybe I need to show you, maybe I need to show you some statistics of how things have degenerated. And today is as if, you know, everybody, it is normal. Just last week alone, a child in Anambra was beaten to coma. Just last week alone, a child was found locked up in a place in Ogun State. Just last week alone, two children, siblings, were electrocuted because PACN went to disconnect electricity in one place and they left their live wire carelessly on the road, and these children picked them up and they were electrocuted immediately. Just this last week, a whole lot happened to children. And as I was saying in a private broadcast, I said, look, these things that happen to children last week happen to children every week. What has now happened is that it has become normal. It has been normalized. It doesn't even make headlines again. People can report it. And that is why at our own level, we say we need to report these things. Again, we created a news platform where all of these things can be reported because we want to be aware. We know that enlightenment is superior to enforcement. The food, the oil of enlightenment is information. If people are not informed, you're asking about the level of awareness. If people are not informed, how are they going to know what their responsibilities are? If they do not know what their responsibilities are, how are they going to live up to that responsibility? If they live up to that responsibility, how are they going to be consistent in living up to that responsibility if they're not aware that there are still a whole lot of issues that they need to address? So for me, awareness is a constant thing. We do that at our own level, every day, calling attention to matters that has to do with children, ensuring that everybody is aware. But let me ask you a question. When we are talking about this awareness, we are still talking about those who are educated. We are still talking about those who went to school. We are still talking about people that can access your platform now. But there are people in the villages who cannot access your platform. There are people in the villages who don't use a phone. There are people in the villages who do not know about the rights of these children. So what is the effort being made to reach out to these people? We have National Orientation Agency. What is the labor of National Orientation Agency to translate Child Rights Act into Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Ibiobio, and the Child Rights Law of different states, to translate it into local languages that the people who don't speak English can read and understand what the rights of children are, right? What are efforts going into that? What is the National Orientation Agency doing about that? What is the Federal Ministry of Information doing about that? What is the State Ministry of Information doing about that? Now, Lagos State, promulgated the Child Rights Law in 2007. The Child Rights Law in Lagos State witnessed a review, an amendment in 2015. I think it's going through another amendment now. Of all the states also that have promulgated the Child Rights Law, how many of them have even gone through amendment? And you find some northern states who claim to have promulgated Child Rights Law, reducing the age of children to 14, when the spirit of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is that a child is anybody below 18. One of the biggest wins of the Child Rights Act of Nigeria 2003 is the idea that a child is anybody below 18, criminalizing child marriage, right? But the truth of the matter is that in some states in the north, where they said they have promulgated the law, in Kano, in Kaduna, in all of those places, go and check their definition of children. One state says they are going to castrate anybody who abuses children. People went to town, they were rejoicing that they are. So I said, okay, before you rejoice, have you read the law? Who do they define as children? Anybody below 12, anybody below 14. That is what they are talking about there. It means that, so somebody who marries 15 years old, 16 years old, 17 years old is free. It's not going to be castrated. So you find that there's a whole lot of ignorance out there, and I agree with you. Enlightenment is, in our organization, we say enlightenment is superior to enforcement. Enlightenment is the way to go, but I can assure you that it is not going on the way it should be, because how much can the private sector do when the public sector is lacking and does not seem to be interested in calling attention to the rights of children? Because when you call attention to the rights of children, you are likely to be asked that, what about your own role? If you say parents should do this, you as the one, you that say do not rob, you that say do not steal, do you rob the temple? He that comes to equity must come with clean hands. Where are your own hands? What are you doing for the children? How are you protecting the rights of children? How come 20 million Nigerian children are out of school? How come? How come our children are still suffering from stunted growth? How come our children are still suffering from lack water, sanitation, and hygiene? How come our children are still dying from childhood diseases that take children away before age 5? How come we are still dealing with all of those things? So if we are dealing with all of those things, therefore, we are impaired as government. We are impaired as leaders to be able to now come out and tell children and tell parents, this is what you need to do, because he that comes to equity must come with clean hands.
All right, in coming to equity with clean hands, let's look at some of the cultural practices in Africa. Does it in any way contradict the Child Rights Act? I'll give you an instance. For one of the rights talks about the right to participation. And in that, the child is supposed to be heard or be given a voice when it comes to matters that affect them. And there are cultural practices that contradict that part of the Child Rights Act.
Well, the challenge is this. We are yet to recognize the ingenuity of children, right? That children have inside of them human ingenuity. And that human ingenuity speaks to two things. Number one, the capacity of the child to think. There is limitlessness in what the child can think. There's limitlessness in what the child can do. The child is a genius, the genius of children. So because we do not recognize that, one of the most neglected rights of the Nigerian child is what we call participation rights. Even at the family level, asking children what they want, asking them what they need to do. Now we are not going to be at the beck and call of children. That anything they want, we give it to them. But we train them by asking for their opinion and asking of their views on issues. That is the way these things are supposed to be. But the truth of the matter is that because we do not recognize the power of children, their capacity to think. My friend's son was 3 years old or so, and the sister was like 1.5 years old or thereabouts. And this 3-year-old boy, 3 or 4 years old, was at the back of the car. Both of them were sitting on their car seat at the back, and the dad was driving. And one of the younger child was trying to play with the older child. And the older child was trying to push the younger child away. And the dad looked from the side mirror and said, Nathan, allow your sister to play with you. And the 4-year-old boy said, Daddy, I'm not saying she should not play with me. I'm only saying she should not hurt me. Now, the child was able to differentiate between playing and hurting at the age of 4 or 3.5 years old. That is the ingenuity of children. The other day, we were teaching children about where heaven is. I think we were teaching 6-year-old, 7-year-old about where heaven is. And when we were laboring, we were sweating. We were trying to define heaven. And one 7-year-old child just said, can I ask you a question? Or 6-year-old, and said, sir, when we want to go to heaven, are we going to go there by a vehicle? Are we going to be transported there? I said, no. I said, okay, so when we are going to heaven, we are not involved in the transportation. We said, yes. He said, so, sir, instead of focusing on where heaven is, why not focus on the habits we need to inculcate in ourselves so that when we now die, we can go to heaven? And again, why were we teaching children that kind of thing in the first instance, right? And so my curriculum that I was supposed to teach for 4 weeks in the children's department crashed that day because a 6-year-old who did not sit in my teacher's review of hundreds of teachers who sat to review that thing that we're going to teach, none of us picked that, but because it affects the child, because the child is the recipient of that knowledge, the child is able to speak to that. I had a 2-year-old, I'm raising a 2.5 years old. I have my first child at the age of 51. I'm 54 years old now. So, and that child now is 2.5 years old. I'm amazed at the level of his reasoning. I'm amazed at what he knows. I'm amazed at the fact that he has opinion and everything. The mom was just saying yesterday that Thierry is highly opinionated. And we're not trying to suppress that opinion. We are trying to train it. You show him a particular pair of shoes that this is what you want to wear. He says, I don't want to wear this one. This is what I want to wear. We'll pick what he wants to wear. And since it doesn't hurt anybody, we allow him. We listen to him. We relate with him. We reason with him. We know that what we are trying to do is to ensure that we speak to his individuality. We let him know that your opinion counts and your opinion matters. Now, let me give you an example. If you are at home and you are watching a movie, it is the tradition of parents that when a child is watching something, you change the channels, you say, go, I want to watch something. Now, why do parents do that? Parents do that because they say they are the owners of the TV. They are the owners of the house. They are the one who bought everything, right? And that is why the child should be disadvantaged and the child should not enjoy equal right, because it cannot happen that a parent is going to be watching something and a child will come with his friends and they'll come and switch it off and say they want to watch something else. If a child cannot do it, why should the parent be able to do it? There you are going to say, well, the parent is the owner. But the truth of the fact is that the parent is not the owner. The parent is a custodian. Because these children, we were the one who invited them. They were safe. Wherever they were, we laboriously invited them. I prepared for 15 years to have a child. I got married, and for 15 years, we were preparing to have a child. And so I knew the effort that went into having that child. Now, that child was fine where he was. The child was not the one who wanted to come. We were the one who wanted the child, and we now bring the child to this world. When we bring the child to this world, how should a guest relate? How should a host relate to a guest? The challenge is that we always miss the point, thinking that it's about the child. I was speaking at the platform yesterday, addressing bullying in schools and at home. And I said, enough of placing the blames at the end, at the doorsteps of children. Children, what you see in schools today that you call bullying is a reflection of our society. Our children are either beneficiaries of our example or they are victims of our example. Whatever you see in children is a microcosm of the macro problem, is the micro representation of the macro lawlessness in our country. That is what is going on. And so instead of you to focus on the source, Where does this problem come from? You begin to label children. You said there's something called the bullied. I said there's something called a bully. And there's something called the bullied. I said, no, a child is not a bully because the child perpetrates bullying. That does not make the child a bully. The only institution that can declare a child a bully is a court of law. Because even the Abuja video that went viral, what you saw was that you saw one child slapping another child. You did not know what happened before that child began to slap that child. Maybe it was the child that was now being slapped was the one who slapped the one that was slapping the child before. And that does not justify what happened at that level. But some people had duty of care. They were the ones under whose care those children are being raised. They are the ones who have responsibility. Now the parents of the child who was being bullied have sued the school for 500 million, asking the school, telling the public that the school has not lived up to their duty of care. So our children are just treasures. Our children are just precious. In our organization, there's a way we describe children. We say precious children. They are gifts, they are gems.
Shaping policy, advancing development.